Righty. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this afternoon, this evening. I'm very, very grateful. It's been a number of years since I've ran a public event like this, and I'm really keen, I'm really excited. And there's some familiar faces and some people who I haven't met, which is fantastic. Really, really looking forward to connecting with you all this evening for this evening's event towards Earth-centered culture. So my name is Scott Wallace, and what I'm going to be presenting about is, it's going to be a pretty diverse presentation covering a whole range of topics from veganism, animal rights, to diet, consumption, our global food systems, our conditioning that we've been exposed to over the years, and I'm also going to start unpacking and reversing some of that programming that we've been exposed to over the years. So I'm coming to you with a number of different lenses throughout my variety of qualifications and experiences across law, across science, frontline animal rights activism. I've also been a fisherman, someone who's exploited animals and been a part of these systems where we're commodifying and using animals in the past. So I've experienced so many different points and different perspectives. And so my intentions tonight are to share little snippets of that to hopefully inform and empower and inspire people to take action, to be a part of co-creating the new Earth. A new Earth where there's less violence, where there's more kindness, more compassion. A world where all members of the Earth community have their rights and interests upheld and acknowledged by humans. That's the vision of the new Earth that I'm stepping forward and calling everyone into, because it's something that we need to be co-creating all together. So I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this beautiful country that we gather on right now, the Yugambeh people, and acknowledge their ancestors and their elders, past, present, emerging, and really acknowledge their strong cultural connections, their earth-centered cultures that they've had for tens of thousands of years, that has enabled them to live truly sustainably, has allowed them to deeply connect with themselves, with the earth, with the country that they've been on for thousands and thousands of years. So we've got a really short history here in the nation now known as Australia. But we need to understand that there were hundreds of nations in this land. And a few weeks ago, I was up in Brisbane for an Invasion Day rally and protest on the 26th of January. And it's so beautiful hearing their songs and dances and the level of detail the Indigenous mob can recall about particular species. They knew, for example, the Quandamooka mob up in Moreton Bay, where I work. They have stories that when the white-bellied sea eagle rocks up, Metakimpa, they know that's the start of the fishing season. As soon as that bird hits the water, the mullet have rocked up and they know, okay, now it's the time to start fishing. So instead of using technologies that we use, instead of referring to Google to find out information, we're talking about cultures that have checked in with themselves, that are deeply connected with themselves, and which has allowed them to connect with other beings and the whole Earth community. So one of the things I've realized over the years is that it's so vital as a first step that we actually connect with ourselves, that we start looking in. We start really delving into what's present for us, the way we see the world, how we're showing up, how we are in integrity and where we're not in integrity in terms of the world we're wanting to create. And so that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with ourselves. And this is something that can at times be the most difficult because it requires us to confront what we've been a part of. It requires us to look within and then to start delving deeper. So I'm going to invite everyone. Ooh, I hear some voices. More new friends, maybe. T, I'm just going to run everyone through breath work. If anyone rocks up, can you just make sure they're looked after? Yeah, awesome. So I'm just going to invite everyone just to close their eyes and just to get really comfortable in the seat where you are. I invite you just to relax your shoulders. Release the tension from your jaw. And what we're going to be doing, we're just going to be taking 10 slow, conscious, connected breaths. So we're going to take our first breath in 3, 2, 1. Nice big inhale. Just allowing all the stress from today to be released, any old energy out of your body, just finding your inner peace, your inner calm. Maybe 5 more. You'll notice your state shifting. And on the last inhale, we're just going to exhale all the way and just hold for 10 seconds. So last big inhale. Let out all that air, let your body sink, and just hold for 10 seconds. Finding that inner stillness, connecting with ourselves. 3, 2, 1. And what we're going to do now is just take 5 slow breaths. We're going to inhale for 4 seconds and exhale for 4 seconds. So in 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. And last inhale. And we're just going to let out a sigh on our exhale, or any sound that you feel called to. Just when you're ready, just slowly opening your eyes, coming back to the room. We can often get caught up in our minds. We can often get caught up in the stresses of the days, pressures. And we're preoccupied, we don't have enough energy or focus to go within our hearts. And that's a space where I hope to take everyone tonight, is to a heart-centered space, into an earth-centered and a heart-centered space, where we can bring these two worlds together of what's in our hearts, and to see that so much change that needs to happen on this planet doesn't require us necessarily learning new things or being different as human beings. It's more about a process of reconnecting to ourselves. It's as simple as that. Reconnecting to the values, beliefs that are already within us. And also making a sound like that just sort of eases us all into connecting with each other. Like, you may know some of the people, you may not know any of the people here. So it's important we just feel comfortable. We're all here to connect, to learn, to engage, to share our stories and experiences, and also work together, you know. Some of the things I discuss may be triggering for you. You may find it hard to listen to, hard to see, but I encourage you to embrace it with an open heart and an open mind as well. Okay, so earth-centeredness. Now, this is a term that I only heard about 4 or 5 years ago. So during my law degree, I was studying a course called Earth Jurisprudence. And what Earth Jurisprudence is all about earth-centered governance, earth-centered laws. So how do we start looking at, the current ecological crisis that we've got and start generating solid solutions? Now, Thomas Berry, in his book, The Great Work, he had this quote: "The deepest cause of the present devastation is found in a mode of consciousness that has established a radical discontinuity between the human and other modes of being." So it's really emphasizing that disconnection, one within ourselves and one between us and animals and the rest of nature, non-human animals, because we know we are animals ourselves, right? So Thomas Berry was a massive pioneer for Earth jurisprudence, articulating some really wonderful, profound ideas and concepts and philosophies around what Earth-centeredness can look like, especially in the formal spaces within institutions, universities, legal systems. And this quote for me is like, it's, you know, so many people in looking at a social justice issue or an environmental issue will go, okay, well, the root cause is A or the root cause is B. Now, in my opinion, given what I've learned and what I've come to understand, I really believe that so much of the violence on this world, so much of the environmental destruction has stemmed from human disconnection from self, which has then been perpetuated outwards, right? So I encourage everyone to check out the work of Thomas Berry. So since, 4 or 5 years ago, I came across Earth-centeredness in this course, and the lecturer said, hey, we've got these Earth-centered philosophies and ideals, but we need to understand where we're at currently. Because Earth-centeredness sounds great, but what actually is it? We need to look at where we are, how we can move forward, and really acknowledge and accept where we are at currently. Now this illustration can summarize so much. If you remember one thing, like just understand and look at this diagram. So we've got two contrasting worldviews, two contrasting belief systems. On the left-hand side, we've got the ego, or the anthropocentric, human-centered worldview. And on the right-hand side, we have the ecocentric, or the earth-centered worldview, right? Now, if we look at this hierarchy, we've got a hierarchy on the left-hand side with men as men in terms of the long-established patriarchy in some cultures, and then we've got women, some animals which we consider to be more important, and then down this ladder of importance potentially, And on the right-hand side, it's a bit more connected, it's a bit more holistic. So what we want to be doing is transitioning away from a human-centered culture, from a destructive human-centered culture, over to an earth-centered culture. And this is a transformation that I've experienced personally myself, and I'm continuing to look at all the ways in which we can embody earth-centeredness. So the things I shared tonight is like one snippet of what earth-centeredness can look like. It's understanding earth-centeredness from the perspective of our relationship with animals and nature, and how we show up in the world, and how we interact with animals, and how we treat them. So let's pick apart this ego-anthropocentric, human-centered worldview. We've got human superiority. We've seen ourselves as the most superior species on this planet. We have these ideas that we are the most important, everything is inferior to us, right? We have really rampant speciesism and kinism, which I'm going to talk a bit about later on. But essentially, speciesism is where we discriminate based off an individual's membership of a particular species. So we consider particular animals to have less of a moral significance compared to others, purely because they're from a particular species, right? It's arbitrary discrimination. Kinism, this is the ideology that has conditioned us to eat certain animals, right? And I want to expand on this stuff a bit later on. We've seen non-human animals as property. We've commodified, we've owned animals, we've seen nature as a resource. We have strictly focused on the extrinsic value of what nature can provide for us as humans. So what extrinsic value is, it's not looking at the value of that creature or of the tree in terms of the fact that it just exists and it's beautiful and amazing, but it's what can we as humans get out of this animal? What can we as humans, how do we make money from Mother Earth? How do we make money from the rivers, from the oceans, from the forests, from drilling holes into Mother Earth and then running that through some crazy process to get plastic, and all these things that we're consuming that we've built up in our environment. These are some core components of this human-centered worldview. So it really focuses on that disconnection, the illusion of separation between us as humans and the rest of the Earth community. Now these beliefs, these philosophies are so deeply entrenched within our society, within business, within medicine, within educational institutions. They become institutionalized, and we don't often realize what's happening, you know? So it's important that we actually bring them to the surface and confront them and then start picking them apart. And all of this has helped me understand how I've shown up over the years, you know, my journey of transformation and what I can be a part of in terms of this important transformation to create this new earth. So in contrast to that human-centered rubbish, we've got the eco-centric. And so I won't say that everything human-centered is rubbish, but in terms of, you know, our relationship with animals and nature, it really hasn't served us. But human-centeredness is a very beautiful thing. So the earth-centered worldview, we start looking at nature as a whole as being more important. We start exploring the fact that humans are a part of a beautiful, interconnected, interrelated earth community. We have thousands and millions of species here on this planet. We are one of those millions, right? We've got the rivers, we've got the forests, we've got the deserts, we've got the underground networks of fungi that are the most expansive networks we've ever seen on this planet, probably underneath us right now. There's so many life forms that we share this beautiful planet with. So our existence and our health is dependent on a healthy, functional earth community. We wouldn't be able to breathe that beautiful oxygen, that fresh air, if it wasn't for everything Mother Earth was providing. Now, 3 out of every 5 breaths we take is oxygen coming from the oceans. We get more oxygen from the oceans than all of the forests on Earth. This oxygen comes from phytoplankton, and there's so much phytoplankton in our oceans. Most of our planet is blue rather than green or any other color. So we can be grateful for every 3 out of 5 breaths for the ocean and the phytoplankton, and the rest we can be grateful for the trees and the forest. So here's me. Here's me maybe, I don't know, early, maybe 2011, 2012. At this point, I was living on a houseboat with my parents for about 6 years. I was an avid fisherman. I was eating animals. I was exploiting sea life. I was also studying marine biology, professing to be an ocean defender, someone who loves animals, but also I had a couple of thoughts that were going in my mind. How can I be volunteering with Sea Shepherd, wanting to be an ocean protector, and, you know, going for a scuba dive and then coming up from the ocean and eating fish and eating the beautiful creatures that I was sharing space with half an hour ago? But I pushed that to the side because it's too hard to think about. It's fine. I'm a marine biologist, and I'm a fisherman, and I'm a scuba diver, right? So it's not even a big fish, but like, look how stoked I look, you know, thumbs up. Like, I've caught bigger fish, but, you know, sorry, fish. But, you know, it's just like it was another creature that, you know, yeah, it doesn't matter that there's been a massive hook put in its mouth. And I used to think, oh, imagine having a big hook in my mouth. Nah, don't worry about it. It's fine. We push these thoughts to the side. So it's just, and then on the right-hand side a few years ago, I was at Death Row Unchained Animal Sanctuary. And even when I was still eating animals, I think most people coming across another being would probably be pretty compassionate, would probably want to hug the animal, pat it, you know, get close with it and just be like, yeah, another being, this is cool, you know. Our first instinct isn't to grab a knife and slit its throat and start eating it. Our first instinct is to show love, compassion, respect for these other beings. So this was an example of how I've questioned my relationship with animals over the years, and it was fucking hard to swallow. Really hard. Because it forced me to confront who I was, who I thought I was. 2 very different things. This cognitive dissonance where we have particular beliefs, but they're incongruent. So, for example, I'm an ocean defender, animal protector, but I'm also eating sea life and I'm a part of ocean exploitation, right? That's cognitive dissonance. So, I come to you sharing that, you know, we're not... it's important that we confront ourselves, that we look at our actions and go, okay, well, what's in alignment, what's not? Because we create our reality. And the feeling in our gut when we're doing something that doesn't feel right, we feel it. It's a full body experience once we connect with that. And I encourage you all throughout this presentation, throughout tonight, if you're chatting with people or if you're seeing something on the screen or if you're hearing me share something and you go, oh, that doesn't feel good, go into that and remember that, because through that is where growth is. Through that is where we can learn and expand. And that's an area where you need to look at within your life, you know? Okay. So as a result of this human-centered worldview, we have exploited and abused and enslaved billions and billions and trillions of animals. I don't exaggerate with those numbers. Currently, so this is a screenshot from a film called Dominion. Now, Dominion came out about 2018, I think, maybe 3 years ago. And Dominion focuses on all the ways in which we as humans have exercised our dominion, our control, our force over non-human animals. All the ways, and it focuses on standard industry practice and footage. Now this is, for me, animal agriculture is the epitome of human-centeredness. It's the epitome of the most destructive, horrible, violent expression of human-centeredness, because it sees us as humans as breeding into existence billions of animals. Well, we know in 4 or 5 months' time, or in a week's time, or in 2 days' time, they're going to die, and we're going to chop them up and eat them. So animal agriculture is all about the global systems of food production, which are producing meat, eggs, dairy, leather, any animal product, essentially. This is all, you can put under the umbrella of animal agriculture. And I didn't know much about animal agriculture, and I wasn't aware of just how destructive animal agriculture was. So we've got, where's the little laser? Oh, I don't know, there we go. Oh, back. Yeah.
Cows, are they?
I think it might be sheep.
Sheep, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So we've got all these sheep in these pens. Like, this is control. This is forcing our will onto these animals. They are considered property and to be objects. So as part of our culture, we need to confront the words we use, the language. Our culture consists of how we view the world, how we treat each other, our habits, our beliefs of the world. So much is included in culture. So I encourage you all to think about, what's your culture? What have you been exposed to? What have you been taught growing up? And has that shifted? And what elements of your culture have served you? What hasn't? And where can we start making some adjustments, right? So this beautiful cow up on the left-hand side. You notice a tag in its ear. It's pretty common. When we think of cows, we go, oh yeah, there's a tag in its ear because it's a number. It's live stock. It's living stock. It's an object. It's property that we humans have commodified. We see livestock as assets. So this is an example where this is another sentient creature, another being that has its own family, that communicates, that feels, that senses. It's a sentient being, but we've reduced it to a property, right? So across the world, we have about 74 billion land animals that are killed and exploited every single year. 74 billion. If we were to kill humans at the same rate, we'd be extinct in about less than 2 weeks. Right? It's something insane. So, yeah, in about a month's worth of killing animals, that's the amount of humans that have died in our history. Something like that. 67 million chickens. 82,000 calves. Now, the reason why there are calves up there is because as a result of the dairy industry, they kill baby cows. And I'll explain all this a bit later on. And baby lambs, a few months old, they're also being chopped up and killed. So, across the globe, 70 billion. Did I get that wrong? I thought it was 54. Anyway, my mind's blanking. I'm pretty sure it's around 54 but it's billions, right? So 2.7 trillion sea animals each year as well. Like, the numbers are insane. It's really, really unfathomable. Across the world, 6 million animals murdered every hour for food. 6 million, right? So our choices not only affect the environment, our choices not only affect our health, but everything we do has a domino effect on the entire planet. Most people here may believe that we're all connected in some way, shape, or form, energetically. As beings on this planet, we're all here as one, right? Yes, we have our separate physical bodies, but it's all, it's all connected. So animal agriculture, not only is it the direct reason that this is the most amount of violence and suffering on our planet is through our food systems. We're also talking about a profound environmental impact as well. So animal agriculture is the single most destructive industry on the face of our planet. We're talking about the leading driver of deforestation and species loss, ocean dead zones, a huge consumption of fresh water. About a third of all our fresh water on the planet is put towards animal agriculture. In Australia, 54% of our total land mass is for animal agriculture. 54% of this country. Think about that. Think about all the forests that have been cleared over mainly the last, couple decades and before that. It's really profound. Across the world, out of all the agricultural land, so not only animal ag, but also plant-based crops, 85% of all the agricultural land is for animal agriculture. Most of our world is riddled with animal agriculture. So a massive driver of deforestation, as I was saying before. So when I checked the data a few years ago, do you guys recall that there was a massive deforestation crisis in Queensland over the last 5 to 10 years? And Wilderness Society and all these groups are saying massive deforestation crisis, do your bit to help it, it's a global hotspot. 93% of that land clearing was for animal agriculture. So mining makes up a small percent. Infrastructure, cities, small percent. It's mainly for animal agriculture. We're clearing forest to make way for grass. And then animals will eat that grass. So we're losing so much biodiversity. Now, animal agriculture is a very inefficient system because what we're doing, we're often clearing land, which is killing animals, destroying forest that's been there for 50, 100, 250 years, whatever it is, and then turning that into grass, which is a lot less biodiverse. And then at times, we're also clearing other areas to put animals into, for example, like factory farms and more open grazing, but then growing plant-based food for animals elsewhere. So about 3/4 of all the soy in the US is actually grown as feed for livestock. I think it was at least a third, if not around half of all the corn that's grown is feed for livestock. So we have all these plant-based crops that are being grown, and instead of humans eating it directly, we're putting these plant-based crops into feeding animals, into the 50, 60 billion animals. There are people starving in the world right now. We have enough food. It's a myth that there is not enough food on this planet. What's wasting our food is animal agriculture. It's inefficient distribution of food. It's the way the system has been set up. The system is intended to create these outcomes, right? It's planned. This is all intentional, and we need to confront this and understand it. So this is pretty full on. When I started researching more about this, I was like, this is insane. Like, look at the environmental footprint. Climate change, for example. Animal agriculture is a major, if not the biggest driver of climate change. Beyond Zero Emissions did a study maybe 4 or 5 years ago into land use in Australia, and they calculated that when you look at greenhouse gas emissions over a 20-year time frame, instead of a 100-year time frame, like a lot of the modeling we look at, they say, oh, the global warming potential over 100 years is this. We don't have fucking 100 years to act. We need to be looking at models that have an impact on the world today, models that have an impact tomorrow and next week. That's the sense of urgency that we need, right? So when they looked at their modeling and said, okay, 20-year time frame for global warming potential across Australia, the overall agricultural sector, which includes plant-based crops, is responsible for over half of Australia's annual greenhouse gas emissions. Not the mining sector, not the transport sector, not the electricity sector, agriculture. And most of that emissions is coming from animal agriculture. Now, I studied environmental science at Griffith University, and I wasn't taught this. I studied 4 years at a university which had the first environmental science course in Australia, and I wasn't taught this. I spent 4 years immersing myself in sustainability, in conservation, in knowing everything about the environment, but I wasn't taught this. So it's understandable that when I started researching more after my degree, I was fucking pissed off. I was frustrated that I wasn't taught all this information because I thought I was empowered. I thought I knew what was going on. I was eating the sustainable seafood. I was eating the local grass-fed beef, this and that, and I thought I knew what's up. I didn't actually know what's up when it comes to this stuff at all. I didn't. And that was hard to confront. I was frustrated at the institution where I studied. I was frustrated because I thought, why didn't I know this? I should have known this. But I had to accept I didn't, and now I know. And then I was now responsible for choosing differently. So 4 or 5 years ago, when I realized how destructive animal agriculture was, that was my first catalyst to say, hey, I need to start talking about this. And so much has unfolded since then. So, we don't hear about animal agriculture from institutions. We don't hear a lot of environmental organizations talking about animal agriculture and diet and consumption. And if they do, it's very, very limited. But for the last 12 years, the United Nations has been saying we need a global urgent shift to a plant-based vegan diet across the world. Raise your hand if you hadn't heard about that. The United Nations is saying this is what we need to do. Okay. Yeah. So, a few people. Now, they've labelled meat as the world's most urgent problem. Huge. Really, really massive. And Oxford University did some research a few years ago, and it was a massive study. They looked at, I think about 45,000 different farms across the world, where they looked at, everything from small-scale organic, grass-fed animal agriculture up to intensive factory farms, the whole range of animal agriculture, the whole range of plant-based crops, massive monocultures, and also the simpler, biodynamic farming and all this sort of stuff. And their research was conclusive. When you're comparing animal agriculture with plant-based agriculture, the footprint of animal agriculture is so much more greater than plant-based crops. The worst, of some of the plant-based farming is still it's just starting to get close to the smallest impact for animal agriculture. There's a massive difference, right? So they found out that, if we shift to if a plant-based vegan diet was adopted globally, as a result of that shift in farming, we would actually free up 75% of global farming land. So we can start rewilding, start revegetating 75% of the land that's been cleared and used for animal agriculture. Imagine that, 75% of that land with biodiversity starting to come back, with more life, with the forest flourishing, with the waters being clearer because there's not 74 billion animals worth of shit going into our waterways. In the US, there's 134 times more waste from animals than humans. And in Australia, there's no pesky laws that require farmers to have to treat all this waste. It's dumped in rivers, it's dumped in slurry ponds, it's everywhere, right? So we're looking at a shift in our diet as essential to addressing climate change and a range of environmental harms, right? Now, if we shift our diets over to whole foods, plant-based vegan diet, we'll be saving about 1/18 of the land. We're going to use 1/18 of the land. we're going to be saving about 1/13 of the water. So we're going to be using like a fraction of the water. And we can reduce our carbon footprint for food by over 50%. It's very, very amazing stuff. Small changes make a massive difference, right? And the reason why we have so many environmental issues, it's like the collective impact of individual actions. That's what we're looking at. It's our contribution. Well, people say it's just me, what can I do, but we are the reason why we're in this situation. It's everyone's little choices that end up being a big thing. So for example, it was just me and my dad fishing on the weekend. Yeah, caught a couple of fish, didn't go over the bag limit because I'm responsible, but there's 700,000 other recreational fishermen in Queensland that are doing the same thing. So things total up. So veganism. Now, one aspect of veganism is the plant-based diet. So not only is our human-centered culture, which has resulted in us exploiting, consuming, and harming animals, resulting in the biggest ecological disaster we can possibly think of. It's also having a massive effect on our health as human beings. And I'm very passionate as well of having informed, healthy, empowered human beings on this planet, as well as looking after the animals and looking after Mother Earth. So the World Health Organization have done some really, really big studies over the last few years, and this is a summary of their data. So the carcinogenic classification groups. Processed meats have been given a class 1 classification. These foods cause cancer, right? And I encourage you all to double check all the stats that I've shared with you. If you don't believe anything I've shared, explore it yourself, find your own truth. This is mine, this is what I'm sharing with you. But it's up to you to find those truths for yourself, right? So hot dogs, sausages, bacon, salami, all this sort of stuff causes cancer. Red meats, pork, beef, lamb, probably causes cancer. We know that the consumption of animal products is not necessarily healthy for us. The cholesterol, the saturated fats, everything that's pumped into meat, and our consumption of dairy products, super high in cholesterol, things like eggs, it's not healthy for us. And I thought it was for most of my life. I'm not qualified or experienced to give people nutritional advice, but I will share my experiences with a plant-based diet. So I found a plant-based diet to be fucking fantastic. I haven't felt better since I've started to eat a plant-based diet, since I've made the connection 4 or 5 years ago, and I know the food we're eating is colorful and it's alive, it's not dead. So if we look at eating the rainbow, if we look at eating plant-based foods that are filled with nutrients, filled with life, we can start looking at preventing and in many cases reversing a number of diseases and potential cancers, allergies, obesity, diabetes, hormone problems, skin issues, stroke, high blood pressure, you name it. A plant-based diet can have a positive impact for all of these things, right? It's super powerful. It's one of those things where once you start looking at your diet and consumption, we really want to start learning and understanding more of it. It's like doing your research, exploring things to actually make sure what we are eating is full, is nourishing, is enough. And my last blood test, they were all within perfect range, except for cholesterol, which was below average, which is expected, which is a good thing. So yeah, I've got plenty of information up here about all this stuff, so you can come have a read, but I'm going to move through. Where are we at? Health impacts. Oh yeah. So also on an energetical level, when we're consuming animal products, what's the vibration we're ingesting, right? These animals were enslaved, they're sent to a slaughterhouse, forced down a small little channel, seeing their friends in front of them scream, have their heads cut off. It's violent, it's horrific. And then we ingest that piece of animal flesh. There's suffering in that, there's violence in that. So on a spiritual level, it's also something we need to understand. If you look at that in terms of what you're eating, that's very insightful. Excellent. Okay. So currently, we've got another worldwide pandemic, COVID-19. Now, based off, I know there's so much information out there, and I've looked at a whole range of conspiracies and this and that, and where I stand at the moment is that based off the scientific evidence that is available, I believe COVID-19 is a real thing, right? I think there's been so much, media influence and fear and control that's been exerted, but I believe it's something that is within our world right now. And COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease, so it's something that has come as a result of transmission from animals to humans. So as a result of us, clearing, wildlife habitat, as a result of us consuming wildlife at wet markets and stuff like that, as a result of our animal agriculture industries across the globe, we have had pandemics. Swine flu, animal agriculture. Bird flu, animal agriculture. MERS in Saudi Arabia from eating animals. Mad cow disease, animal agriculture. SARS, and add to that, HIV. Do you guys know HIV came as a result of people eating chimpanzees? And Ebola as well. Humans eating animals. Like most of these global pandemics have resulted because we've chosen to eat and exploit animals. So let that sink in. We may not be in the position we are if we weren't exploiting animals. For their sake, for our sake, for the entire world's sake, this shit is important. And we need to make these connections. So tofu never caused a pandemic. Simple as that. When was the last time we heard of like broccoli or tofu or apples causing like a global pandemic? I don't know. No. So, yeah, it's pretty clear. Try it today, tofu is amazing. So look at this is to sort of bring this back all together. Human centeredness, our culture and our diet and consumption is expressed through human centeredness. So we've exploited and enslaved animals, we've eaten them, we've consumed them, and look at Mother Nature speaking back to us. It's going, what are you doing? How many signs do you want? Is a global pandemic going to be the last sign for you guys to wake up and look at what you're doing? What's caused this? Confront that. So, this is a really big wake-up call. I found this morning. It's so cool, little tofu. So veganism. Now I've spoken about how our consumption of animals and our diet has a massive effect on the environment. I'm going to touch a bit more on the animals as well, but we've seen some of those statistics on just the amount of lives that are being lost through our consumption habits. We know that our consumption, our diet has a massive effect on our health as human beings and on our communities. But a plant-based diet is only one aspect of veganism. Now, veganism isn't just a diet. A lot of people equate the two and go, oh, veganism, it's just, eating lettuce and sticks and leaves and grass and all this rubbish. No, we actually want to eat healthy, yummy, delicious food as well. So there's so much more to it. So veganism is a philosophy. It's a way of living. And I really believe that the closest thing we have to a modern day earth-centered culture is through veganism. It's through understanding and embodying the philosophy and lifestyle of veganism and showing up in the world every day as best as we can with these principles. We can't go and reverse our built society. We can't all go back into the wild and just live primitively where we're just hunting and gathering and getting all our food from that way. It's not possible, but this is something we can do with the circumstances we find ourselves in. So veganism is a way of living and philosophy which seeks to exclude, as far as possible, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. And by extension, promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of humans, animals, and the environment. Essentially for the benefit of the whole beautiful Earth community that we are a part of right now. So, as I was mentioning earlier, in terms of for the people, veganism in terms of benefits for people, there are people that are that are dependent on killing animals for their job. Like, it'd be great if we could get those people out of slaughterhouses, because the rates of stress and PTSD and domestic violence are insane and through the roof with people that are working in slaughterhouses. That needs to change. In terms of just some basic human rights and equality around the world, we have enough food and water, but we're giving it to 60, 70 billion land animals in animal agriculture. You know, there's people on this planet that probably haven't had a warm shower ever in their life. You know? So we've got to look at these benefits. Compassion. Okay, so veganism isn't about being perfect. It's about understanding and being conscious of all the choices we're making in terms of what we eat, in terms of what we wear, in terms of what industries we support, whether we're going to support industries that exploit animals or not. We have that choice. And everyone here, I can guarantee it, no one here needs to eat animals to survive. We're here in the city. We're here at an event. Like, we're not in the category of on a deserted island where we have to, like, what would you do? That's not us. Let's get real with where we are and the situation we find ourselves in instead of looking at other hypotheticals. So veganism at its core, though, is about not exploiting animals. It's really, really crucial that we understand that. It's about not exploiting animals and doing what we can, as best as we can, to not support animal exploitation. There's animal products in so many things that we consume, not only food products, and some things are really unavoidable. You know, I've read there's blood in the tar on roads now because there's so much blood and like extra bits of animals because we're killing billions of them that they're putting these products into everything else. In kids' lollies, there's gelatin, which comes up like from the hair and the hooves and the cartilage and all the things from someone's body. Like, it's crazy. So veganism, we need to understand it's about the animals as first and foremost, but it has benefits for, you know, the entire world. And I really believe that veganism is the expansion and evolution of the human consciousness. I really believe this is a process of reconnection that's going to give us guidance moving forward for how we can better look after and empower the whole Earth community, not just humans. Okay, so like over the years, I used to argue and like just be like, oh, fucking veganism, bloody tree huggers, da-da-da-da, this excuse, that excuse, so many of them. And then when I made that connection, when I realized, hey, I actually hold vegan beliefs. I think it's wrong to harm animals. I think it's wrong to be cruel to animals. I consider myself to be someone who's loving, kind, compassionate. You know, you take any one of us even now, but especially as a child, and put in front of that child a little baby bunny rabbit and an apple. Like, I don't think that kid's gonna rip the head off the bunny rabbit, kill it and eat it. The kid's gonna be like, oh, hello, beautiful bunny rabbit, I love you, thanks for the apple, and eat the plant-based food. We're not drawn to violence instinctively. We're beings of love and light. That's who we are.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys just a few minutes of a trailer called Dominion. So we saw that screenshot before. Okay, so some of the footage in this is of animals being abused. It's as simple as that. It's standard industry practice what's happening on farm. That's what I say, it's standard industry practice. But the reality of what is standard industry practice is quite horrific. So we need to understand when we purchase meat, eggs, dairy, and other animal products, we don't exactly know what's happening. But what we do know is that we are paying people to kill animals on our behalf. We have a responsibility in that chain, and we can't disconnect from that responsibility. We are always going to be having an impact and a consequence. So I show this trailer to help us understand, like we've spoken a lot about about the environment, about human health, about us as humans, but we need to understand what it's like from the perspective of an animal. And to even help you answer your question, looking at it from the perspective of these animals that have been caught up in our human-centered world, what's happened to them.
flames, tidal waves, washing all the world away. Today, everything we thought will change, and this life will never be the same again. And just let go. Just let go. Rise together. We will rise together. Time is hanging by its final thread, and the skies are burning and bleeding red. Holding on to this beautiful pain, teardrops fall like diamonds in the rain. But today, together we rise. Just let go. Just let rise together.
That's a couple of minutes of what billions of animals are going through every single day on this planet. So that's the reality. That is the truth of what is happening, of what's happened, what's happening on our planet as a result of human-centeredness, as a result of this expression of anthropocentrism, where we've decided we want to kill, exploit, mutilate, torture innocent creatures. Now, this is occurring as a result of our choices to purchase meat, eggs, dairy, and to support animal exploitation. So it's our responsibility. And we need to understand actually what's happening, because the reality of animal exploitation industries is not shown, is not promoted. And we need to connect with that, to truly understand what are the consequences of our choices. And that for a lot of people, once we know, okay, well, if I purchase this product, that happens, motivates us to choose differently. And we have the power to choose. We have chosen to create this world we're in now. We get to choose with our money, with what we invest our time and energy into, and how we show up in the world. And let that be an example. So, if we think it's wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering on animals, then we need to understand that taste, culture, convenience, pleasure are not good enough excuses. Because these are the best reasons we have for exploiting and killing and eating animals. That's it. It's not out of necessity. It's not because we need to. And this last little mantra, reconnect, realign, go vegan, I think this is about reconnecting to those core values and beliefs, realigning our actions to be in integrity with that, and then living vegan. Because I believe we're all vegans at heart, but we have been exposed to decades and decades of conditioning and misinformation and propaganda and industry bullshit being fed to us to keep us disconnected from the reality. Because most of us don't know this stuff, and it's intentional that we don't know this stuff. Because if we knew what was happening, we wouldn't necessarily be living the way that we have been. Okay, so I've got this lovely wall of excuses for killing and eating animals up here. And if you can't see it, in the top left-hand side, we've got like beautiful sunshine, all the humans are coexisting with the animals, and the grass is green and the sun's out, and there's just so much love over there. And then we've got this massive wall built up, and there's someone holding a knife, and there's animals that are being chopped up, and there's blood everywhere, and it's pretty horrific. That's animal agriculture. That's, animal exploitation. And so on this wall, there's a number of excuses and justifications for non-veganism. There's excuses such as, well, lions eat meat, or animals are, what if they're slaughtered humanely, or it's a circle of life. Well, our exploitation and harming of animals and eating animals, that's the circle of life, and that's not the circle of life, and that's not the circle of life, that's a circle of death and violence. That's not the circle of life. And yes, lions do eat meat, but lions are only like in a quarter of the mammals that actually eat other animals. Most of the rest are vegans, eating plants, They're not aware like us, exactly. They don't have the level of awareness and moral agency that we do as humans. So we can't necessarily use a couple of animals as an example of how we as humans should show up in the world. Lions also sniff each other's assholes when they meet each other. They kill their babies. Like, there's so much that lions do that we wouldn't do. So we can't pick and choose, We should act as humans. But anyway, I'm happy to go through if people have questions, justifications, what about this, what about that at the end, I'm happy to go through every single one of them and share with you a rational, logical, punchy, probably, confronting answer. Maybe not, we'll see. Because I've felt a lot of these. We've used excuses to justify animal abuse. And when we realize we've been doing that, it's pretty confronting. But there's a reason. There's a reason. Where have these excuses come from? Put your hand up if at some point in your life you have expressed one of these things to someone. Yeah. Most people. We've said something up there at one point, right? So this comes from deep conditioning. Again, that human-centered worldview. We've got things like speciesism and carnism, where we've been indoctrinated from a young age to actually discriminate against particular animals. So I believe the first form of discrimination, the first form of abuse that we're desensitized into as humans is when we're a kid and we sit down at the dinner table and our parents have got chicken nuggets, or we've got a chicken drumstick, or we've got beef, on our plate, and then we go and love our dog and pat the dog and then hang out. We see a chicken at someone's house, and we're like, yay, chicken. If you were to tell that kid, hey, last night's dinner, you have to kill one of these animals and someone chops their head off, the kid's going to be like, what? That's what would happen, right? So, speciesism. This is a word that we need to be familiar with moving into the future. What is speciesism? Most people understand what racism is. Most people understand what sexism is. All the isms. Speciesism. Right? So I've been speciesist throughout my life. I've, seen some animals as more important. Yes, especially volunteering for Sea Shepherd. It's like the whales, they're amazing. And then, the other fish, they're cool. But then those fish, I eat them, so they're not as good. And then, the freaking octopus and all these other things, I'm like, yeah, they're less significant. So I invite you all to think of what are the hierarchies you've came up with in your mind over the years? How have you been speciesist? I remember one time when I was about 13 or 14, I spent a lot of time in Croatia. My family's from Croatia, and I've been back about 7 times. So at a young age, I remember even in primary school, I was in the ocean by myself hunting sea life and fishing, and with a hand spear, like right in there. I knew how to look at the environment and go, okay, there's rocks over there near an opening, and there's a couple of fish around there. There's probably an octopus hiding under that rock. And sure enough, I go over there and there's a big ass octopus. Then I'd grab it, rip it out of its hole, it wrap its friggin' whole arms around me, and I'd try to hold it so it doesn't bite me, and I'd bring it up to the jetty, and I'd kill it, and then my grandmother's got a hot pot of water ready to go to put that octopus in there. That's what I was living, that's the life I was living. But one day, I got an octopus on the jetty, and I was like, I can't kill you. All these years of doing the same thing, I started questioning. I was like, hey, my heart's speaking to me. I can't kill you. Now, I wish I could say I definitely didn't kill it. My memory isn't that clear, but I questioned it at that time, and that's what stands out to me, right? It's me reconnecting with my heart, to realize actually what's going on. So speciesism, this is super important. This is anthropocentrism. This is really, really poignant that we understand this. So this is a form of discrimination based off, membership of a particular species. We have a dog on the left, we have a cow on the right. Is there any moral difference between these creatures? They both want to live, they both have families, they both communicate, they're both sentient, they all want to live free, they don't want to suffer, they don't want to feel pain. And if they were both here, we'd probably all hug and, we'd be hanging out with them. Even those who still eat animals would still be showing love and affection to those creatures. That's your heart. That's your heart, not the other stuff. So as a sort of subset of speciesism, we've got carnism. Now, this is something I only heard about maybe 3-4 years ago. This is another term that I think it's so important if we can become familiar with what carnism is, because this is the belief system that has conditioned us to eat certain animals, right? So Dr. Melanie Joy, she did her PhD on the psychology of eating meat. She spent 4 to 5 years studying, why haven't we questioned, why we love dogs, eat pigs, and wear cows? Why haven't we thought about that? Well, there's cultural conditioning, because in some cultures, they'll eat the dogs and the cats and the cows. And over here, we're like, no, how dare you eat a dog and a cat? But we'll kill the baby lambs, we'll kill the cows, we'll kill the chickens. It's cultural conditioning. So carnism, it's an invisible belief system. This is the opposite of veganism, right? This is the world we've been brought up in. We've been brought up in a world filled with carnism, filled with it. And we have been partaking in these systems for a very long time. So it's a very violent, oppressive belief system. It's considered normal. So eating animals is considered normal, natural, and necessary. If you believe that, that's the result of carnist conditioning. Now, again, these things are so institutionalized, deeply present within our society, everywhere. Okay. So we have there's been all these disconnections between what's happening to the environment, what happens to the animals, what happens to our health as a result of us consuming and eating animals and disrespecting nature and just having this illusion of separation. Now, as we saw that video before of Dominion, maybe for some of you, it's the first time that you've actually started to deeply connect with what's going through the lives of those animals that are caught up in our food systems, or the lives of animals that are being farmed, all the mothers that are being forcibly impregnated over and over to be bred to have their babies stolen and sold, or to have their babies taken away in the dairy industry. Like, we're so disconnected from it. And this is why. Because of carnism, because our conditioning, because when we go to the supermarket, we see this little label with a happy cow with this like freaking bell on it, with like little tuft of hair, looking like this is like the happiest cow in the whole world. Like, have you seen the happier cow? Look at it, right? Looks beautiful. So we think when we purchase this cheese, the cows are happy. I want to buy the happy cow cheese. That's the cheese I want to eat because I'm a good person. And you are a good person. We are great human beings. But our choices to purchase animal products like meat, eggs, and dairy comes with consequences. And if we knew what was actually happening, we wouldn't be supporting it, I believe. So some of the activism I've done is you get these little stickers, and especially on this frigging cow cheese, put a sticker underneath which says stop, an animal suffered for this product, and a little link to a documentary where people can see the truth. Because if every animal product had a link to Dominion, oh, far out. The animal ag industry would like start crumbling, right? So to help people connect with what's happening, so in the dairy industry, I knew when I sat down for dinner that bit of steak, that, an animal's died for it, sure. Some of the other conditioning that comes in, it has me saying steak or beef, when actually this is, steak is cow flesh. It's an animal's flesh. We have these euphemisms to disconnect us from the reality. Beef, steak, this, that, pork, instead of pig flesh, We need to shift our language, remember, we need to shift the words we use. Happy cow. Cow, yeah. Cow. It should say the breast milk from another species in a packet, good luck. Still want to buy it? So in the dairy industry, so like any mammal, the cow needs to fall pregnant, so that way she's ready to give birth to a cow, little calf, so she produces milk and lactates for that baby so it can have milk. Now in the dairy industry, because they don't rely on Mother Nature, they forcibly impregnate and artificially inseminate the cows. They take the semen from a bull, they stick their fist into the anus of the cow to stimulate her cervix and insert semen into the cow. That's what happens in the dairy industry, right? Then that mother falls pregnant, and because they don't want the calves drinking the milk, they take away the babies from the mother. They separate them at birth. If you're a baby male cow, within a few days, you're normally killed. In Australia, the standard industry practice is with blunt force trauma, which they use a sledgehammer. They knock their heads on the ground, whatever it is, that's standard, RSPCA approved industry practice here in Australia. That's what's legal. Just because it's legal doesn't make it acceptable or morally acceptable, right? So then if it's the female, they keep her in the system of exploitation, milking her, after 4 or 5 years, which is a fraction of their natural lifespan, they're too fucking exhausted after being exploited for 5 years that they die. They're not good enough. And so they send them to the slaughterhouse to be killed where their babies were killed, and that's how the meat industry continues. The dairy and the meat industry are one. They're all linked up, right? So that's dairy. That's, if you're drinking milk that comes from another species, that's pretty much what's happening. Whether it's goats, whatever, this is the same process. Ice creams, whatever, any dairy milk. Now on the right-hand side, we have a little chick in a blender. Now this is what happens in the egg industry. And I didn't realize, because I used to eat like 3 or 4 eggs a day on my toast with my salmon and my avo, and I was like, fuck yeah, scrambled eggs. Cool. Tastes great, right? I used to think, oh, this is like a chicken's period. Nah, I don't think about that. That's weird. That's disgusting. This came out of the same hole where the chicken has sex from peas and shits. I was like, no, don't think about that. That's weird. That's the cognitive dissonance coming in, right? So in the egg industry, whether they're free range, whether they're caged, it doesn't matter. The male chickens are considered wastage. So they kill the baby male chickens because they don't produce eggs. Now in Australia, the standard industry practice, RSPCA approved humane slaughter, is to blend them up alive in what's called a macerator within their first day of being born. When you purchase eggs, you are paying for that to happen. Now you need to ask yourself, if you can't turn that switch on the blender, why are you paying someone else to do it? Your responsibility does not end when you just pay at the supermarket. You are responsible for everything that has happened. Now that can be a lot to confront, but it's also where our power lies, because we have choice. We have freedom to exercise our choice, right? Animals don't. We need to be their voice. So yes, there's so much crazy things happening to animals. We're exploiting them, we're killing them. We've got these industries set up that are based off secrecy, hidden behind closed doors. We've been conditioned to think eating animals is normal, natural, and necessary. There's so much that's gone into creating our current culture, and it has influenced our current relationship with animals and nature. We need to understand that. It's not just like, oh, yeah, this is the way things are, and it's so intentional. Everything's been put together to get to where we are now. And hopefully you can start to see how to unpack some of this. This is like, over the years, my research and study and experience, it's like a little snapshot of like so many different things, which I hope help you guys understand and be informed and to be empowered in your choices and to be part of creating a new earth together. So one of the reasons why you can just kill a baby calf with a sledgehammer. One of the reasons why you can just blend the baby chickens alive. One of the reasons why most of the pigs in Australia are put into gas chambers. Most of the reasons why we can just do horrible things to animals, like cut off their teeth and cut off their tails because they're a pig or they're a chicken. And one of the reasons why you can't do that to a dog or a cat is because of what's legal. Our laws are also speciesist, right? Now this is the Animal Care and Protection Act, Queensland. Now section 3 is the purposes of the act. So this is like the vibe of the act. This is like the intention of what this bit of legislation wants to do. The first line, the purposes of this act are to do the following: promote the responsible care and use of animals. This legislation is intended to promote the use of animals. That's what it's trying to do. It's not trying to protect animals and put these massive protections in to make sure animals aren't being killed and exploited. These laws are in place to enable and allow the violence, to allow industry to have all these exemptions for the ways that they treat animals, which would otherwise be completely illegal if it was done to a cat or a dog or another animal. Now section 3C, it says, protect animals from unjustifiable, unnecessary or unreasonable pain. Now this is balanced out with the interests of the people who are exploiting animals. The law says it. Now if you were to put, if the animal was to speak in human language and the human was to speak, then we might have a fair understanding of, okay, well, the animals are going to die, it's going to be exploited, it's going to have its kids taken away, and the farmers are going to go, well, I want to make money. We need to be making money into supporting our families and building our communities and expanding our economy, sure, but not at the expense of exploiting and harming animals, So our legal system essentially has enabled this to happen, and this is done, again, intentionally. And this is something that I'm so passionate about changing and shifting. There's so many loopholes within our legal system that allow this to happen.
And Scott, that hasn't changed at all since 2001?
So, no. Well, there may have been small adjustments, but like the crux of it, no. But this year, the Queensland government is just opening up a review for the Animal Care and Protection Act. So we've already started talking about that within the Animal Justice Party to actually put submissions forward, because there's so much that needs to change. the same industry that polices and enforces animal cruelty is responsible for promoting industry. It's massive conflict of interest. So you need to firstly separate that, because that's going to change so much. Yeah.
We've got a committee that's making a submission.
Yeah, amazing. Okay. So what's legal doesn't necessarily mean what's moral. Human slavery at some point was legal. That was completely accepted, but we go, no, that's wrong. I wouldn't do that. And if you think, for anyone who thinks back and goes, well, okay, where would you have stood on the issue of human slavery? Would you have been in support of slavery in terms of ownership of other beings, or would you have stand up against it? And if you say, well, I wouldn't be against human slavery, ask yourself where you stand on animal rights now, and explore that. So, animal rights and animal welfare. I've only got a couple slides more to go. This has gone for very long, and I understand that, but hopefully you guys just hang in there for a little bit more. So there's a massive difference between animal rights and animal welfare. And this is something I'd really like to emphasize, because I thought that they're the same thing. Animal rights, animal welfare, it's all animal stuff. Yeah, it sounds cool, I'm on board, whatever. But the current paradigm across our globe, for most people, for most legal systems, for animal protection organizations, they're focusing on a welfare paradigm. This is the dominant paradigm, the dominant worldview, that it's morally acceptable for us to use and exploit animals. That's not questioned. The morality isn't questioned. We can use animals for our benefit. Our interests are always more important than animals, because if we want to eat them and exploit them and farm them, we will. We shouldn't cause them unnecessary pain or death, although we don't question whether we need to eat them in the first place. But that's what we say, It's unnecessary, we won't do that to them. And we should treat them and kill them as humanely as possible. Now, the definition of humane is to show compassion and benevolence. Now, if you share space and you're a companion of a dog and your dog wasn't well, would you take your dog to a slaughterhouse to be put down? No, probably wouldn't. You'd send them to a vet, and they would anesthetize the dog and give them an injection, and they would fall asleep, hopefully painfully, and that's their life. That's not what's happening to animals in slaughterhouses. What's happening in slaughterhouses is not humane. Put yourself into the position of the animals and ask, is it humane? Would you like it done to yourself? The answer is going to be fucking no way. These are labels that have disconnected us from what's happening, because the humane label on a bit of meat has been put there by industry for us to feel comfortable as consumers and say, yes, I will buy the humane meat because I'm a good person. They're capitalizing on your good heart to make money. It's as simple as that. Now, in contrast to animal welfare is animal rights. So animal rights, this is about questioning the use and exploitation of animals in the first place. It's about questioning whether we should even be using animals. Should we be exploiting them? If they need to be killed, how do we minimize their pain and suffering as much as possible? We shouldn't be overriding the interest of animals with human interests. So the main difference between animal rights and welfare is that animals, in the animal rights paradigm, we want to give animals a right to life. Animal welfare doesn't care about that. In animal rights, we want to see animals free from exploitation, to not be seen as property. Animal welfare doesn't care about that. Animal rights, that's what it's at. So in terms of an earth-centered and eco-centric perspective, if we look at the whole earth community, we need to start not looking just at the welfare of animals, but the right for them to be living and free, and to live free from harm, and to do as much as we can to make their lives as best as possible, because we have that power, we have that capacity. Now I'm going to run through these quickly. For any activists, and there's a number of us in the room, the abolitionist approach to animal rights is something that is fundamental to our work within the animal rights space, and crucial for people to understand, because we want to not necessarily just regulate animal exploitation. We want to actually abolish the use and slavery of animals. When it came to human slavery, we didn't say, okay, let's regulate human slavery. Monday to Thursday, we're going to do no slave days, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to have slaves. Does that sound good? We were like, this is wrong. We shouldn't be commodifying people. This is an abuse of human rights. We wanted to abolish human slavery. The same thing needs to be applied with animals. Because if we say, oh, let's just regulate animal exploitation, we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. Look beneath the iceberg. That's where we're focusing. Principle 1, animals have the right to not be treated as property, first and foremost. Not to regulate animal exploitation and not to necessarily support welfare reform campaigns, because if we say, let's put all the efforts and energy into getting a bigger cage for the chickens, but at the end of the day, they're still being exploited, they're still going to have their heads cut off, that doesn't mean shit for the animals. Doesn't mean anything for the animals at all. Veganism as a moral baseline, and to focus on creative, non-violent vegan education. A lot of people get the idea that vegans, they're trying to shove their beliefs down their throat and you're being so preachy. We're speaking up for the voiceless victims of our society. We don't have a lot to gain by speaking up about animal rights. What do we gain, personally? So the interesting thing is, it's actually when we sit down to consume, a bit of animal flesh, we are literally shoving our beliefs down our throat by saying that my taste buds are more important than this being's life. Bang. That's the irony, Okay, 4 and 5 and 6. So we link the moral status of non-human animals with sentience. The fact that they have sentience is enough. That should be enough, not their mental capacity. Because if we look at mental capacity and say, well, some animals have a lesser mental capacity, well, if we apply that to humans, there's some humans that have a reduced mental capacity. There's some animals that will maybe more intelligent than a human if they're impaired. We don't kill them and take their rights away. We still respect them and value their life. We reject all forms of discrimination. This is where the intersectionality comes out. We start seeing the collective oppressions and discrimination. Ageism, ableism, classism, heterosexism, sexism, racism, and speciesism. We need to stand up against all of it, not just a couple. And we embody the principle of non-violence. This is crucial. Okay, so there's so much change we can make on an individual basis with the purchases we make, with the industries we support. We have so much power. But there's also so much out of our control. And often people will say, well, it's all too much, what difference can we make? And really you do make a huge difference, and be empowered and informed enough to know you do make a difference, and that what you do and say and what you choose to eat impacts on the world. It's as simple as that. So if we look at getting earth-centered principles, not only in our human day-to-day culture, but bringing that into governance, into society, into law, we can start looking at things like the rights of nature movement, where we have earth-centered principles within our legal system. There's countries around the world that have got earth-centered principles within their constitutions, within their frameworks, within every level of government. Okay, so we're talking about blending, the individual action we can take on a day-to-day basis to create a kinder, less violent world. There's so much we can do. We know about veganism. We know the impact that our choices have. We also know that we can come together as a community. We can, collectively make choices and to support each other, to support the animals, to speak up against issues that are important to us. And we also know we need to shift our political systems. And this is one of those things that is very, very difficult. What you choose on a day-to-day basis, easy. Make those changes. But the structural change that we need requires a lot of effort and persistence and togetherness, right? So last year, I signed up as a member for the Animal Justice Party and ended up running in 2 Queensland elections. So I stood for the seat, I ran as Division 13 candidate, which was like Burleigh, Palm Beach, some of those areas for the Queensland local government elections, the council elections. And then in October last year, I ran as a candidate for Burleigh for the Animal Justice Party. And this was a wonderful opportunity to start getting the discussion happening within our political spaces. So to be able to sit at a table with members of the LNP and Labor and the Greens and be like, hey, this is the vision of the world we have. We want to end animal exploitation. We want to create a kinder, less violent world. We want to respect animals. We value our economy as well, but how we're making money needs to change. So whatever causes you guys are passionate about, you know, working together, connecting with each other, connecting with community gets shit done. Like, it gets so much done. And look at the potential, you know, tonight with so many people here to network, to connect, to actually see how can we work together? How do we start bringing our ideal reality into the present moment? How do we start creating that future? How do we create the new earth, right? So in the photo, there's Dave. Yeah, we've got Dave next to me on the right, and then Jen and Pam, and I'm so grateful you guys have made it tonight. Thank you. If anyone wants more info, I've got heaps on the table here, but this is a really powerful movement of getting animals and nature into politics. AJP has the strongest platform for environmental protection in Australia, actually tackling animal agriculture, not like the other parties which don't, you know, as one way to distinguish. Okay, so this is a beautiful weaver bird. This is a photo I actually took, right, back in 2019 when I lived in South Africa for a year. This is a beautiful bird that, you know, spending time watching it in the front yard of Kate's parents' place, watching the birds make their little nest. And they'd fly around and they'd chirp and they'd hang out and they're just making a beautiful little home to lay their eggs and to have their little offspring, right? And like, I wouldn't want to go kill this bird. I wouldn't want to go disrupt it and kill it and take out its habitat and eat it. Like, but we eat other birds, so what makes this one more special? You know, we've got to start asking those questions. So bringing everything together, we're part of a beautiful, interconnected Earth community, right? We've had a lot of conditioning over the years. We've been exposed to so much bullshit, so much that's disconnected us from our hearts, disconnected us from our true core. And we know what this has led to in terms of impact on human health, impact on animals, impact on the environment. It's savage. And we have collectively created this world with our choices, and we have the power to choose differently. We have the power to choose kindness over violence. We have the power to choose compassion, the power to choose respect for other members of the Earth community. And it's important to remember that, you know, what would you do? Well, if you were in the shoes of this other being, little ant crossing the road, or this little bug or whatever, would you maybe be conscious, just maybe give it some space, maybe step over it? There might be 10 other little insects that you're going to squash that day. It's almost unavoidable. But from everything down to the little insect, to everything in between, to the megafauna, to the whales, to the fish, to the bears, to the birds, like, they just want to be. They just want to be free, and we can live our lives in a way that reduces our effect on these animals. And the adoption of veganism, that process of reconnection, is going to be something that I truly believe is an expansion of the human consciousness, is something that is going to it's going to be so beneficial for the whole Earth community. So that's a snapshot of a whole bunch of different things, perspectives, insights, facts, everything. And a lot of this can be quite confronting, challenging. And you guys have been here for so long, and this has gone for so much longer than I'd intended. I'm wrapping up very shortly. So I just invite you all to close your eyes again. Just relax those shoulders. And just take a nice deep breath. Take a couple more. And be grateful for the oxygen we've been breathing tonight, for our minds that have allowed us to pay attention, for our bodies that have kept us going, for our ears that have allowed us to hear information, our brains to process it, these beautiful bodies that we've got. Now, I've shared a lot with you all tonight, and this may take some time to integrate all of it. And for now, while our eyes are closed, I just want to paint a picture for you. Imagine a world where all beings are living free. Imagine a world where all members of the Earth community actually have their rights acknowledged and upheld. A world with less violence, more kindness, more love, more compassion. If that's a world that looks good and feels good, is that something you are willing to create? Because it requires you to make that choice every single day. Thank you. You can open your eyes. Okay. Thank you guys so much for your attention, for being here, for coming along, for leaning into an opportunity to maybe have your worldview challenged a little bit. Choice is ours every single day. Yeah.